replace the steering head bearings now. We've taken the front wheel off, and we've taken the fork legs out, like fork tubes out, like you do when you're changing the putting boots on it. And we have shown greasing the steering head bearings on a GS. So if you were going to grease these, you wouldn't have to pull the whole thing apart, like we have here. Alright, if we were going to grease them, we could take this nut off and pop the top clamp off the same way you do on the GS. In order to grease them. Okay. Get a bungee and strap that up out of the way. We got the top clamp off. I'm going to take this stuff off, so I might as well, even though it's against Shank's religion, we're going to wipe some of the crud off it.
The crud keeps it together.
Yeah. So now we're going to loosen this up. Notice how tight that was. Absolutely, you got to have that $60 BMW tool if you got a GS, because it's got to be torqued exactly right. All right, so this thing comes off, and there's a seal in there, and there's a bearing. It says on there, Bulgaria. Okay, so now we got to pull the stuff out of the bottom. Okay. Well, if you don't have all the wires and stuff that Shank has, after you get that top thing out, you can just pull this right out. So that's your triple tree, and that's your bottom bearing. So before we do this, we're going to take the races out of the top. Now, some people like to heat it up. I know I do personally, but since it's Shank's bike and he doesn't care, get you a drift and you go. Okay, there's one, and now you get to see the other one from the top. Alright, that got the races out of the top. So these are the races, and I don't know which is which, but you can see there's some lines on them there. Oh yeah, this was the one from the bottom. So you can see those lines. That's the Brunelling that makes the notch. You see it okay? Okay, good. So the next thing we're going to do is take the bearings off. Take the bearing off the triple tree. All right, we've got the triple tree in a vise, and here's the bearing, and that's the little seal thing. This is going to get destroyed, so you should have some of those on hand as well as the bearing. And according to the BMW book, you just take a punch and stick it in there, and Shank's going to demonstrate now.
Makes me feel good to hit my bike. That's the last one right there.
Okay, so now we've got that off. Okay, so we've kind of cleaned this up a little bit, and this is a brand new seal. So you want to put the seal with the metal side down so that the bearing sits in the little ridge there. So that's just going to go right on there. Settles down there. A piece of PVC pipe here that fits over this thing, and this is the old nasty bearing. And what happens is we get the new bearing. Oh, that's not going to work. That's the wrong size. Okay. What's going to happen is we're going to cut this bearing up so we can use it to drive the new bearing. So let's see. You okay with this?
Okay.
So we're going to get a tool and
I'm surprised the cage didn't break when I was whacking it off.
cut the race. Take the bearing apart. And this will fit the new bearing very nicely. This edge here will drive down on this edge here, and the piece of pipe will push down on there, and everything will work nicely. So while we've been talking, we've had the new bearing heating up on the stove on low, and so now I'm going to go get it. Alright, so we've got this bearing and it's been heated up on the stove, and hopefully it'll drop right on there. Yes! Okay. So we put the old race on, and then we're going to take this and make sure it's seated real well. Okay. And you can tell because the seal's not moving. So the seal can't spin, but of course the bearing can spin. So now we need to knock that race back off of there. Okay. Okay. Alright, now the seal's tight, the bearing's on there real well. So before we grease this up, what we're going to do is put the races in the steering head. Now the races have been in the freezer, so we're going to reposition the camera and show you how this works. So this is a heat gun. We're going to put it on low. So low is like 600 degrees. And the idea is to heat up the steering head, not hot enough to melt the paint. So we want to heat it up and get it a little bit warm. And then we're going to pull the races out of the freezer, where they've been sitting getting cool for a while, and pull out one at a time. Hopefully it'll drop right in there. If not, we will persuade it a little bit using the other race. Put it on high, it's 1,000 degrees. It's okay, shank paint. Alright, we've got that hot enough so that it feels pretty hot to my finger. It's uncomfortable to put it on there. Open the beer fridge. Keep the bearing out. Hopefully it'll drop right in. Let's see what happens. Alright, take another bearing.
I'm doing like this.
That's going to dimple it.
Hit it.
No.
Hit it.
No.
Yes. Hit it. Very good. Except you did my paint out.
Bad for bearing. Bad for bearing.
You didn't have to smack it that hard. You don't want it to go in catty corner because then it deforms it.
So we're going to do the bottom bearing the same way, and then we're going to grease the steering head and put it back together.
Okay.
So with the bearing in, we take the old bearing and we put it on top, and then hit it with the hammer, and get it seated all the way. And you can see the lip that it's around there. And then we're going to do the bottom one the same way.